and you'll just have to accept that you accept the recording and that you're still recording. So thank you all for joining us this evening. If you wouldn't mind just putting yourselves on mute, that would be great. And I will make a start. So first of all, thanks everybody so much for joining us this evening. I appreciate you taking valuable time out of your evenings to join us. I'm hoping that this evening you're going to learn some principles and some techniques that hopefully are going to be useful for you as you go back to practice tomorrow. And really, the idea of this evening is to give you some ideas to start stimulating your thinking and giving you the opportunity just to kind of press the pause button on the busyness of the day-to-day in practice and give you the chance to learn some techniques that I hope are going to be useful for you as you think about improving consultations and growing your practices this year. And we've just got a few other people joining us. I'm just going to let them join us, a couple of latecomers. And really the idea of tonight's webinar is all about how to kind of start that growth in your practice and doing it specifically through the lens of transforming the patient consultation. Because very often what we'll find with the clients that we work with is that is the critical point for growth for practices. The better you can make the structure of your consultation with patients, the more you can understand their needs, the more you can start to have an approach that you know gives you and the patient confidence to proceed with treatment, that can be really impactful. So we're going to look at a communication model this evening that comes from the book that I wrote called Inspire, Consult, Sell, which I'll talk about shortly. And really using some of the principles from that book, you can change the approach to communication, makes you feel more valuable to your patients, helps your patients to see the value in what it is that you're creating for them, and helps us to think about how we gain commitment from patients each time we have a consultation. So that's the plan for this evening's session. Those of you who have joined us, thank you very much for joining us. If you don't mind just putting yourselves on mute for a moment, just we will go into some discussion shortly, but for now, if you don't mind on mute, that would be great. So some of you will be familiar with me and my team and the work that we do, but for those of you who aren't, my name is Justin Lee. I am a business coach and I work in the dental industry. So I founded Focus for Growth. We specialize in dentistry. And my background is originally I was a dental technician a long time ago, about 32 years ago. And after I finished working in the laboratory, I then went into sales and sales in dentistry. And I had about 4 or 5 years working in dental sales. I then moved across to 3M and joined them and started a kind of career in leadership. So then in dentistry and outside of dentistry. So I moved across into medical markets. I moved into an IT services business and had what was, I guess, a sales, coaching and leadership career for the next 20 years or so. And then in 2017, having been fortunate enough to have a lot of personal and professional development through my career, I retrained as an executive coach and started coaching business leaders and running programs for business leaders and business teams. And that brought me back into dentistry. So about 4 or 5 years ago, started to work with dental clients again. And I'm really delighted with some of the people that we work with, some of the results that they get and some of the programs that we run. And what we do is really try and help people to recognize where there's an opportunity for growth in their practice, where perhaps sometimes they can find performance has gone off the boil a little bit, where the results are a little bit inconsistent. And what we do is put in place programs that help them to move from that inconsistency back to higher performance, better results, higher engaged teams, higher engaged patients as well, and a more consistent approach to communication. And we've got a number of different clients that we work with in the dental marketplace. Some of them are on the supplier side, so suppliers to dentists and yourselves in practice, and we work with a number of the different practice teams as well. And we've been delighted with some of the recognition that we've received in and outside of dentistry with some different awards and accolades over the last couple of years or so. So really pleased with that feedback. And I wrote these 2 books over the last couple of years. One was for sales teams, and the other, then we had a lot of dentists read the sales book. So I was asked if I could write a book that was more tailored to the practice team. So we did that. And the book, Inspire, Consult, Sell, if you haven't had the chance to read it, it's a really useful read. It's more than just a book on ethical selling. It really does help you to think about the structure of development for yourselves, for your teams, how to really think about communication and your professional development. It's a really, really useful read that goes way beyond just a sales conversation. So that's a bit about me and what I've been doing. I'd love to hear a little bit about you. We've got a couple of polls this evening. So I'll just launch the first one. This is about kind of understanding everybody on the call. So which of these best describes your role in the practice? Are you a practice owner? Are you a practice manager or practice leader? Are you a partner in the practice? Are you more of a business leader? We have a lot of business leaders join our calls. Are you an associate or are you a TCO? So we'll just give people a couple of minutes just to complete that poll. If you don't mind, you can just click on it. If you get access to that, that'd be great. This is interesting. Okay, good. Let me share those results with you. So tonight we have practice owners and associates with us on the call. So 57% of practice owners and 43% as associates. Thank you. That's great. So next poll is about the challenges that you face. So a lot of the challenges that we face around the consultation, based on the feedback from our clients, tend to be these 5 key areas tend to come up over and over again. So I'll just launch the next poll, and if you wouldn't mind, just click the one predominant challenge that you face, and you'll see that we've got a number of options there. So discussing prices for treatment, asking for commitment to start treatment. So you may have gone through the consultation. It's that final piece about asking for commitment. Articulating the benefits of treatment with you and your practice, and that often is that differentiation between you and other service providers can be useful to be able to understand the best way to position, asking the right questions, or creating the best possible patient experience. So there are our 5 options for this evening. Thank you. I think everybody's answered. So let me just end that poll and share the results. Here's what we've got this evening. So we've got number 1 challenge is the top, is the same as number 2, actually, asking for commitment to start treatment. And the second is asking the right questions. So both of those are themes that we'll look at this evening. Thank you for that. And then next is discussing prices for treatment and creating the best possible patient experience. So we'll look at these as themes for this evening's webinar. This is part of why we're doing the polls, is to understand the content and some of the challenges you're facing. Thank you, everybody. That's great. Okay, let me stop sharing that. Perfect. So what I'd also just share with you is these are the results that normally come up in the webinars that we run. It's very similar this evening, actually. So similar themes to our standard feedback from customers. So asking for commitment to start treatment is number 1. Normally that's 20% of people say that's their number 1 priority or challenge. Asking the right questions comes in at second, and articulating benefits of treatment with our practice tends to come in third, and you'll see the ratios there. So we've got a very similar theme this evening. They're the 3 themes that we'll look at. And we also have this document that we use that I'll talk about at the end of tonight's webinar, and invite you as the final thing for this evening to participate in. And it's a free product, we call it. It's like a diagnostic. We call it the Patient Experience Scorecard. And what this scorecard does is it presents you with different assessment statements and allows you then to make some choices about how you feel about your confidence in different areas in the consultation. And lots of those statements come up. And what that helps us to do is identify key focus areas for development for the teams that we work with. I'll just share some of these with you because this is quite interesting, the results that we get on the scorecard. So one of the key statements says, as a practice team, we need to revisit our patient's experience. And interestingly, 75% of people agree or strongly agree with that statement, which is one of our key elements for this evening. Second is, I ask high quality questions that elicit my patient's greatest needs and priorities, and 52% of people saying that they feel confident to do that, which of course means that 48% of people don't feel confident to ask the right questions to get the patient's needs and priorities. Then the third element, which is interesting, is this: I can articulate the benefits to the patient of the treatment options our practice provides. So this is that differentiation. And 66% of people saying they feel confident to do that, which of course means 34% don't have that same level of confidence. And finally, number one theme for us this evening, I'm confident to ask patients for commitment to treatment every time. That's almost a 50-50 split. Some people do, some people don't. So this evening, we're going to work through some opportunities and some principles that will help you address these key areas. So what I'd also like to do is just give you an opportunity to meet each other this evening on the call. So it is a webinar, but it's also an opportunity for some interaction. So I'm just going to, on Zoom, there's this function called breakout rooms. So I'm going to open up three breakout rooms, and I'll just allow you all just to drop into a breakout room and for 5 minutes, just kind of introduce yourselves to each other, just a quick conversation about your challenges or your focus areas to increase case acceptance and grow your practice in 2023. And then we'll take some feedback and go on with the webinar. So I'll open those up, just 5 minutes, and then we'll be back. Okay, I'll just let you do that. Let me open up those rooms. 5 minutes, I'll see you then. You should just get a link that you can click, drop into the room, and you can have a quick conversation with other people this evening. Good, thank you. Resume the recording. Thank you. I hope that was useful and an opportunity to meet your fellow participants this evening. Was there anybody got anything that's specific that they'd like to share about their focus areas for their consults this year? No, happy? Good discussion? Okay, good. Excellent. All right, so let me carry on. We're going to look at those three key themes. There are three key challenges that come up time and time again for our clients, and we've got similar themes this evening or for people who are attending tonight's webinar. And so you'll notice that before the three key elements were asking for commitment to start treatment, asking the right questions, and then articulating the benefits of treatment with us as a practice team. Now, what you'll see I've done here is I've kind of changed the order of the challenge in the order at which it should be addressed, because you will find that one of these challenges unlocks the next, which unlocks the next. So if you ask the right questions, you'll be much more competent and capable of articulating the benefits of treatment with you as a practice team, because you'll understand the patient's needs. And then once you've been able to articulate that treatment and the benefits of treatment, you're much more confident to ask for commitment. So if we handle them in that order, it tends to be more beneficial for you and your team as you start to work through addressing them. So if we don't understand the challenges, then it's a bit of a trap. We have to understand the challenge before we address it. So we'll just cover that in we'll kind of at a high level. So challenge number one about asking the right questions. Remember, the reason we want to ask the right questions is so that we understand the patient's needs. That's really important, because if we don't understand the patient's needs, we kind of find ourselves with a gap. And one of the reasons that that teams that we work with find this is a challenge is because as dental professionals, we often feel this pressure to have all the answers. And so then that leads us to directing the patient consultation. And when we do that, the challenge is that the patient doesn't get the chance to explain what it is they're really hoping for from treatment, and of course, what they're thinking about and what's most important to them. And if they don't get the chance to articulate that, then often they can feel as if they haven't been listened to or understood. So without asking the right questions, without learning to listen carefully, then patients don't feel that treatment is tailored and relevant. They actually feel like it's a generic experience, and there's nothing further from the truth with dental treatment. Actually, it's, as you rightly know, it's one of the most tailored treatment options and services you can offer. So we have to address that challenge first. And very often, just asking the right question and being able to ask the right questions of our patients is half the solution to the problem. So questions we'll look at shortly. The second key challenge that we hear about is this articulating the benefits of treatment with us. And in particular, one of the pet hates, I think, for all of us, even us in sales, is without sounding like we're selling, because nobody wants to sound as if they're trying to sell something to somebody. So the way that we have to do that is to think differently. And because a lot of clinicians are unsure how to differentiate those treatment options without that feeling of sounding like they're selling, what tends to happen is we talk about treatment features without, and if we talk about treatment features without having taken the time to ask the right questions, the result is that we feel a kind of pressure. And what we've noticed is that when patients don't see the value, they tend to focus on price and cost. And really that's largely because, one, they haven't been asked the right questions about treatment, but two, because they hear about features of treatment, not the outcomes. And it's the outcomes of treatment that the patients are really interested in. And so then discussing the price of treatment fees becomes uncomfortable for both, you as a clinician and the patient. And so then you find that patients are indecisive, so they don't make a decision. And of course, this then leads to how comfortable we become in asking for commitment if the patient then is resistant or uncomfortable during that treatment discussion. And so what we have to do is just start to think differently about how we position treatment. And I love this, these two intersecting circles. On the left is what we think as clinicians is important. This is all the information that we think the patient should or could have as part of that discussion. And on the right-hand side is what's of interest to the patient. And we really need to find this spot in the middle where the two overlap. So we talk about what's interesting to the patient and relevant to them, and what's important for them to know, and make sure that we don't do too much in one or the other of these areas. And so then challenge number 3 is about asking for commitment. And this really is one of the big areas that trips people up, even when patients have a clear desire for treatment. If their needs aren't clarified, and if we haven't presented the treatment in a way that is really relevant, then we can sense that resistance from patients. And what we find happens, and it happens in a lot of businesses, not just dentistry, we find that people presenting treatment options or service options will overtalk and tend to pitch rather than have it as a discussion. And if they haven't taken the time to understand the patient's needs, they're then not confident to ask for their commitment, because it feels a bit disconnected in the process. And of course, unless we ask patients for commitment, they're not always going to make that commitment themselves, and they're left then feeling uncertain about what the next steps are and whether or not they're going to proceed. And that really does kind of stop the patient getting the outcome they're looking for, and of course for us becomes a barrier to growth in the practice. So we have to make sure that we have a way to ask that, one, we're comfortable with, and two, that becomes part of our process that we can ask over and over again. Because if we don't ask, the answer is always going to be no. And as obvious as that sounds, sometimes that's something that we perhaps fail to remember and recall as we're managing our consults with patients. So we'll talk about some techniques that help us overcome this evening. But the consequence of these 3 factors is that the treatment acceptance rates tend to be lower or inconsistent, and treatment recommendations tend to be less compelling. So the patient experience kind of starts to suffer, and the results and the potential of the practice aren't fully realized. So what we really want to address is this issue with confidence to communicate. And we have teams that feel hesitant. When you're hesitant, interestingly enough, when we're communicating, when people are hesitant, the other person senses it. And when we have that hesitancy, that's the struggle to ask for commitment. And of course, that means we don't grow our private patient list. We don't grow the type of treatment that we really want to be doing. So we end up stuck doing either routine or reactive dentistry. The consults can be functional rather than transformational, and every consult could be transformational if we get the process right, and that's our aim here. Patients can sometimes feel a little indifferent about treatment when really we want them excited about treatment and starting that treatment journey. And we want to make sure that patient satisfaction really is a priority for us, so that we can increase the patient satisfaction, but also increase our practice revenue and growth. That's really what we're looking to achieve. That's a win-win for us and for the patients. So we do have to start to think differently about the way we look at the consult, change the way we look at things. And then when we do that, the way we not only do the things that we look at change, but everything changes, us, the environment and the structure. So we know that that communication is important in dentistry, and in fact it's so important that GDC have it as principle number 2, to communicate effectively with patients, to give patients the information they need in a way they can understand it so they can make informed decisions. Of course, that's vital. That also means that we should present them with options that aren't just the standard routine or NHS options. That's really important for us to understand that. And this, I use this chart just to help us to understand the journey that the patient goes on as we're talking them through the consult, and how the stages of our consultative process could work alongside the patient journey. So the patient starts their journey with us. You notice we go from bottom to top because we're going to draw the patient up through that journey rather than them just naturally work their way through it. But the patient starts their journey with us unaware very often that either there is a treatment option that could help them or give them the aesthetic result or functional result they're looking for. And what we do as part of our approach is make sure that we're well prepared, we have all the right information, we've gathered all of the right assets ready to be able to have that conversation with the patient. Because in the first instance, we want the patient's attention. So we want them to become attentive to either an opportunity or to resolve an issue that they might have. And the first stage for us then is to share some insights. So some insights with the patient about what's possible. And from that sharing of insights, we move the patient in their own journey from attentive to interested. And once the patient's interested, then what they need to do is express their needs. So our role in the process at this stage when a patient shows interest is to ask them about their needs. So ask really good questions, and we'll talk about how to do that shortly. Ask really good questions, listen carefully to what the patient tells us, and then help them to kind of process their thinking and articulate what it is they're looking for. And once we truly understand what the patient's looking for and they've had the chance to explain it clearly, that helps them to process their own thinking. But it also helps them to move along their own journey from interested to a state of desire. And this is really important because until somebody, a patient, or even us as consumers, until we're in this position where we desire, we want to make progress, we want to make a commitment, then we're not ready to talk about what a solution looks like. And treatment solutions, we should only really be discussing them once we've gone through these first couple of stages, that the patient's attentive, we've asked them about their needs and they've become interested. They have this opportunity, then there's a desire to make a change and to move forward. And that's when we talk about a solution. And that solution discussion moves the patient to a point where they're ready to take action to make a change, action to get the result or outcome they're looking for. And so then, of course, we make a treatment proposal. And the proposal at that point, when the patient's ready to take action, is a natural process. The patient wants to commit, they're ready to move forward. And we find that the final stage then is getting them to agree to treatment, and we just make sure that we initiate some final stage of that conversation. So that might be booking in with our TCO if we have one. It may be booking in with a reception team to take a deposit and making that first appointment. But that really does kind of give us that final conclusion with the patient, gets their commitment, gives them the security and the confidence to move forward. And then what we're really looking for long-term are patients that are loyal to the practice, loyal to our team, and refer their friends and family to us. And we do that through a process of reflection and continual improvement through the patient journey and through our sales process. And really, that's the ideal process. What we find that what usually happens is that perhaps teams don't feel completely prepared. They may introduce treatment options. They don't always ask questions. They are genuinely trying to solve patients' problems, but they find themselves in a position where they can feel like they're pitching treatment, and nobody really wants to be pitching treatment. That leads to indecision on the patient's part, and then if we repeat that cycle, we find we have really low case acceptance rates. So we have to move from the kind of what is a usual process to the ideal process, and that's really what we try and help our clients to change as they think about communicating with patients. So we've got that as a structure, and then we use this model, which is, we call it the INSPIRE model, and it's a mnemonic. So it helps us to remember where we are in any stage of the sales process and the communication process with patients. And you saw it as a linear kind of structure in that previous chart. Here you'll see it as our cycle. So this is the cycle that we work through. You'll see that it starts at the heart of the model with connecting with the patient, with developing rapport, making sure that we have a positive relationship. We make sure that our team are well prepared to deliver the right experience for the patient. We then start to talk about some insights. So we're helping the patient to learn some things about treatment that they don't know. Then we ask them about their needs. And once we understood their needs, or they've articulated their needs, then we talk about a solution. After that solutions discussion, we can start to talk about a proposal and what a treatment plan looks like, and get the patient's agreement to the different elements of that plan. And then our final stage is about initiating action, getting commitment from ourselves, from our teams, and from the patient. And that concludes our process, but we really want to think bigger and start to go through this process of self-reflection, continuous improvement, so that we evolve the patient experience and our process as we go forward. And it's a really simple model when I lay it out like that. We go through this in depth, and we're going to start to talk about some of the key elements of this as we talk about tonight's webinar. But one of the things that a principle that I've found really valuable in my career in both sales and in leadership is this principle that commitment from people, whether they be our teams, whether they be patients, the commitment is pulled, it's not pushed. So if we try and direct people too much, if we try and give advice, too much advice, we meet resistance. And really what we need to do is ask questions and coach and consultatively question people so that they start to make decisions for themselves, and those decisions are aligned with the recommendations that we make. And that just that simple change in your thinking can be really valuable in terms of the approach you take with your patients going forward. So we've looked at the three challenges. Let's look at how do we address these three challenges. So the first one was about how we can ask the right questions in the consultation. So this, as part of our model, sits under this needs discovery stage. So it's the kind of second stage of our process. And this is really important as part of your consultations and discussions with patients, and in fact with your teams. And the idea at this stage is to really take some time, create some space, slow down, open up the conversation, and really seek to understand what it is that your patient is looking for from treatment. And remember that everything you need to provide the best possible treatment to your patients is that they understand what it is. It's in their head. There's only one way for us to get it out, and that's to ask them questions, to listen carefully and let them explain. And that sometimes is the biggest challenge for us, because we don't create that space to let the patient explain. But remembering this principle is really important. And this one I find really useful. So the words listen and silent are made up of the same letters, and we can't really do one properly without doing the other. So for us at this stage of the consultation with the patient, it's really important that we create some silence, some space for the patient to think, and during that space for the patient to think and answer our questions, that we listen really carefully. And that listening is, interestingly, is a skill we have to develop, especially when there's a lot of things going on in a practice. In a busy practice, taking the time to listen is really important for us and for the patient. And of course, I love this quote from Richard Branson: listen more than you talk, because we don't learn a lot from hearing ourselves speak. But in terms of needs discovery and questioning, there are three types of questions, and we have to understand those three types of questions and when to use them. That's really important. So there are three types. The first type of question is an open question. And what we do with open questions, we're really trying to let the other person explain and explore their own thoughts and their feelings about treatment. And open questions allow us to do that. Second type of questions are probing questions. And these are questions where perhaps somebody has given us some information and we just want to understand it in more depth, or we want to give them the space to really understand specifically what it is they're looking for. And we do that through a simple process. I'll talk about that shortly. And then the final questions are closed questions. And closed questions are simple. They can be answered yes or no. But what's really fascinating is that many of us, without realizing it, will be asking closed questions by default. So we tend to ask more closed questions than open questions. Partly that's cultural in this country. Partly it's because we're actually always trying to move things along, and there's always a kind of urgency to kind of get people to tell us what they need and then move forward. But we have to understand the difference between these questions and when to ask them. And if you think about this patient journey that we looked at earlier, and where questions fit alongside this patient journey. Open questions are at the start of the consultation, so early in the conversation when we're really trying to discover patients' needs. As we start to talk about needs and solutions, then we would ask probing questions. So that would help us to really get the patient to think more carefully about what's important to them in treatment, and really start to reflect on what it is they're looking to achieve and how we can help them. And then finally, as part of the gaining of commitment from patients, that's when we would ask closed questions, and we'll talk about specifically how we do that shortly. So understanding the patient journey, our process through the consultation, where different questions are most valuable for us is really useful. So open questions at the start, probing questions as we move through the discussion around the solution, and then closed questions at the end when we're looking to gain commitment. And I'll talk about that specifically shortly. So then we've got to, so that's asking the right questions, and we have a number of ways in which we do this in the full programs. We talk about different types of questions, how to use questions to really shape thinking and help people to articulate what it is they're looking for. And there's lots of different methods that we use to do that. But the principles there are pretty straightforward in terms of structure alongside the patient journey. The second area is articulating the benefits of treatment. So this, for us, is this stage here we call the solutions discussion, and how we make sure that that discussion really does help us to give the patients the best view of what it is that we can offer. But there's a key reminder here that one of the big reasons that the solutions discussion is so difficult is if you haven't taken the time to understand the patient's needs, then you're not able to match the solution that you offer, the treatment proposal. You're not able to match that to the patient's needs, and that's the really big gap. So if you're asking patients about their requirements, their priorities, the outcomes they're looking for, if you're asking those questions, you're going to be much more confident to present a treatment solution that's much more compelling for the patient. And we have to be able to understand and articulate the value we offer to our patients, because if we don't, we'll find that cost will always be a greater priority, and balancing cost and value is really, really important as part of what we do in this stage of the consultation. And what it means for your patient, we think about this in three ways for us. So I said earlier that we tend to talk about features, and features are what the product does or what the treatment does. And we then talk about advantages, and then we talk about benefits. So we think about this in three different perspectives. And when you talk to people about features, it tends to feel and sound quite trivial. So that it doesn't resonate or have the real relevance for patients. When you link features and advantages to how that's different and the competitive advantage that offers for a patient, one treatment versus another, your practice versus another, then that really does start to help people see why there's a difference between what you're offering and what someone else offers. And then finally, we think about benefits. And what that really means is, why is it best for that patient? So it takes it from being something that's generic, like a feature, an advantage that helps them to see why it's better, but then a benefit that says, and what it means for you is this. And you can only do that if you've understood what the patient's needs are. So we think about these three principles and the structure of being able to present treatment options that are truly tailored and relevant, very much like the treatment that you're offering, but being able to explain it in a way that really resonates with patients so they can truly understand the value that they get. So features, advantages, benefits, and we've got a really nice structure that we use to help us to explain that for every part of different treatment options, so patients really start to think this is really tailored, really relevant, and means something more meaningful to me. And then the final area that we'll look at tonight is asking for commitment, and you'll see that the three of these are linked. So a lot of teams try and address the asking for commitment without addressing asking the right questions or being able to articulate the benefits of treatment. And you'll appreciate that if you don't adjust all three of these components, then asking for commitment is still going to feel uncomfortable unless you've followed a process that enables you to feel confident to ask for commitment at the right stage. But assuming that we follow the process, we understand what the patient needs, we've had a treatment discussion that helps them to see what it means for them, why there's an advantage, what the benefit specifically for that person is, then it's a really natural process for us to flow into asking for commitment by making a proposal for treatment. And one of the things that we do that's really useful to do that is we use this principle, we call it permission to gain commitment. So instead of asking for commitment straight away, we ask for permission to ask for commitment. And that might sound like the long way round. The first time I learned this principle, I thought that sounds like the long way round. But actually, what you'll find here is that it's really useful, because if you ask for permission first, you will either get agreement in the first instance, in which case you know that you can then ask for commitment. Or if you don't get the agreement, what happens is the patient's then more inclined to say to you, well, this is still something I'm thinking about or considering. And you will enable the patient, give the patient permission to tell you what might be an objection or what might be on their mind that's a barrier to them saying yes to the commitment. But by doing it this way, it's a really natural way to surface that commitment. And it's as simple as a question that looks like one of these examples here. So something along the lines of, is there anything else we need to cover before we discuss the treatment proposal? So you'll see this is not a question that asks for commitment. This is a question that says, is there anything else we need before we do that? And it's subtle, but the nuance and the subtlety enables the patient to either commit or tell you why they can't commit. Another option is, so if I were to make a treatment proposal, have you got everything you need to make a decision today? And that just enables the patient to say, yes, I'm good to continue. Yeah, can we discuss it? Or it enables them to say, actually, I need to speak to somebody else, or I need to check finances, or whatever it is that comes up, if it comes up. Another example here, if we went ahead today with what we've discussed, would you be ready to decide? So you're just giving people the option to, without having to say, shall we go ahead? We ask them, if in principle we were to go ahead, do you have everything you need to make a decision? And that really is a way that you can ask for commitment much more consistently and feel confident to do so, because it's kind of a halfway house between asking for commitment and checking in with the patient. And assuming that the patient then tells us that they're ready, or that we move forward, then it's much more easy, much more comfortable for you to be able to make a proposal and start to talk about what happens with the patient. And of course, you'll know this better than me, but explaining the treatment pathway, talking about the number of visits and the duration of those visits, making sure that if there's any preparation the patient needs to do before or after treatment, talking about the pricing, the value, the payment options, payment terms, talking about appointment terms and reschedule notice periods, charges if they're breached, and they're just checking that meets the patient's experience and expectations, because what we're doing here is really helping the patient to make that commitment to move forward. But you'll see there are two stages to this. Rather than just asking and making a treatment proposal, there is the permission to gain commitment, and then the proposal, and making sure that we're clear on all of the elements of that proposal. And of course, this is a big part of the patient experience. It's helps them and guides them in their thinking and their commitment. So they're the three components tonight. There's three key principles here that will help with asking the right questions and structuring questions aligned with the patient's journey, being able to present treatment options that are more compelling, thinking about not just what are the features of treatment, but thinking about the competitive advantage for that patient and the benefit to them and how it's relevant to them. Of course, we can only do that if we've asked the right questions in the first place. And then thinking about how we ask for commitment, and it's a kind of flow through that consultation, so that we ask for permission to gain commitment, and that allows us to guide the patient through that final stage of commitment. And once we've done that, once we've made a treatment proposal, the final thing to consider is just to remember that with all of us as we make decisions, and it's the same with our patients, enthusiasm has a half-life. So if you are if a patient has agreed and agreed in principle to move forward, it's really important in that final stage that we make sure that they get that commitment either to start treatment and book in the appointment or make that deposit and make the commitment to themselves. Because what happens if not is that people tend to drift. So they will tend to say yes in the moment, and then maybe they'll go away, and before you know it, the patient hasn't booked in, you're a month down the line, and you've forgotten, the team have forgotten. So getting that commitment in the final stage is really important, and having your team on board to do that is really important, so that it's seamless for you, seamless for the patient, and seamless as part of the experience. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a moment. We covered quite a lot of content there in the last half an hour or so. I'd love to hear from you about your key takeaways. What is it that you are thinking based on those 3 key principles? And we have on our on your Zoom menu bar, you will have a chat function. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat function or in the chat box. What are your key actions to focus on from this workshop? Because of course the content is useful, but where it really makes an impact for you is in the changes that you make and the actions that you take as a result of these sessions. So I'd love to, appreciate not all of you will be in a position to be able to write in the chat box because you're driving or you've got something else on. But for those of you who can, it'd be great. Jay, thank you. So Jay, 1, asking the right questions at the right time could be a game changer. Yes, thank you, Jay. I completely agree. It's that awareness of which types of questions at the right stage in the consultation really does make a huge impact. Thank you. Maria, thanks, Maria. Open-ended questions to get people talking. Yeah, absolutely. And that's and creating the space for them to answer and give you that information. That's a really, really critical part of the sales process. And then you've got asking permission for them to commit to treatment. So that asking for permission rather than just asking for treatment. Yeah, thank you, Maria. That's great. Super. Dr. K, I'm going to call you Dr. K. Dr. K, understanding the 3 types of questions and asking them in the right order. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. And remember, open questions really early in the consultation and early in the patient journey. Probing questions as we go through the consultation and we're starting to talk about treatment options, and then closed questions at the end to gain commitment and move forward. And you'll notice that all of our permission to gain commitment questions were all closed. So it was a statement and a question, but it was closed so that we got the patient to say either yes or no, or to share with us any reservations they had. It's a really powerful way of handling that structure through the process. Thank you very much. And then we've got, sorry, I don't know your name, it just says iPhone on here, but thank you. Listen and silent was a very powerful message. I tend to over talk at times. I know the feeling, and I particularly feel that this evening. I feel like I've talked non-stop for about 48 minutes or so, but I guess that's the nature of a webinar. But thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? That we tend to find that under pressure, rather than ask questions, we tend to talk. Priyam, thank you, Priyam. That's thank you for letting us know. Thanks, Priyam. But yeah, that tends to happen under pressure. And if we can learn under pressure to make that change from talking too much to creating a bit of space and asking a really good question of patients. And one of the things that we work on is having, a really solid bank of questions that you can ask so that it becomes second nature. So you don't have to think in the moment. The questions are already laid out. Then that can be a game changer for your consultations and for enabling the patient to engage. So yeah, that's great. Thank you, Priyam. Great feedback this evening, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that in the chat. I really appreciate it. So in our last 10 minutes or so, there's a couple of things I'd love to share with you. Normally, when we get to this point of conversation, people will say to us, if we wanted to know more, how would we do more with you? How would we learn about the program? So with your blessing, I will just share a few insights around how we run our program. So We have started the Practice Growth Academy this year. We had our first cohort in January last month, in fact, it was 3 weeks ago this weekend. We had some amazing feedback, great experience from our teams. And in fact, tomorrow night, we've got our follow-up call, because the way that we run the program, we have 2 days together in a workshop where we run through the sales process in depth. We talk through all the different content and the principles. And then we have 2 coaching calls as follow-ups to make sure that you've got some support for implementation and troubleshooting if there's any of the principles or the models that you want some support in implementing in the practice. So that's been really useful. We've got that follow-up call tomorrow night, and then we'll have another one in 3 weeks. But we run these in Cambridgeshire at the moment. We're running them at a hotel called Boston Lakes, and we have two full days together. It's a Friday and a Saturday, so minimal disruption to clinical time. Friday and a Saturday. We have a group of around 20, and it's a really nice way to go through the structure of a program, but also start to build a community, work with other dentists and other kind of clinicians who are all looking at achieving the same transformation in their consultation. So we've got the next one coming up in March. I'll show you the dates in a second. How the Practice Growth Academy works. I talked about the scorecard earlier. If you haven't had the chance to take that, please do. That's completely free of charge. And once you've taken that scorecard, you will get some scores in different areas. You'll get a personal development report and some recommendations on how you can improve your consults. So even if that's kind of the only thing you do with us, that will be valuable. We then run our 2-day training and coaching workshop. And what we do as part of the structure is we introduce you to an accountability partner. So we make sure that everybody coming on the course is partnered up with one other person, and we encourage you to work collaboratively with that person through the program and beyond the 2 days between then and the follow-up coaching calls. We use the book and the models from the book as the structure, and we have an online program so that once you've been through the 2 days, you can go back and check in on any of the modules via an online video-based program. So it's really good in terms of the support outside of the 2 days as well. We use this really nice Inspire toolkit for implementation. It's an Excel workbook. So what it means is that you can capture an electronic copy and you can communicate that with your teams. You can share it with other people, and other people can share their plans with you. It makes communicating the changes afterwards really, really effective. And then, as I say, we have 2 90-minute coaching kind of web classes or coaching calls that happen 3 weeks and 6 weeks after the event, because we're really interested in supporting our delegates to implement and get the kind of the impact and the results they're looking for, not just the course and the content itself. And then long term, we're looking at mastermind coaching groups, some leadership development, and lots of other kind of programs that hopefully are going to help beyond just the consultation, really think about practice growth and elevating performance across the team. That's how our academies will be working. So I talked about our patient experience scorecard. The link is on the slides here. I'll send these slides through to you after tonight's session, so you'll be able to click that link there and try our scorecard if you haven't had the chance to do so already. And that gives you a really great way to start your journey with us. This is an example of the toolkit. So these are all the different documents. It's a single Excel file with lots of different documents included. So you end up building this plan to grow your practice and improve your consultations in a single document that you can then share across your teams. It's been feedback on that has been really excellent from the program so far. So the experience, as I say, 2-day workshop. We're holding them at Boston Lakes in Cambridgeshire. Plus the 2 90-minute group coaching sessions. We are limited to 20 places. Our next cohort will be on Friday the 17th and Saturday the 18th of March. So please do feel free to contact us if you would like to discuss a place on the course. We have a 10% early booking discount. It says end of November, it should be end of February, so until the end of the month. Apologies, that's my nimble thumbs. And if you'd like to book a one-to-one call with either me or one of my team, and we have the lovely Teresa on this evening. Teresa, do you want to give everyone a quick wave? So Teresa's with us this evening. Teresa works for our team, and if you'd like to talk to me or Teresa about attending, please do get in touch. We would love to have a conversation with you. And I just final message. Jay's asked on the messages, how do I get access to the patient scorecard? Jay will send that on email after tonight, so that you'll be able to link straight in on the email. Final message. One of the things that we love to do in Focused Growth is kind of think as big as we can. And we're on this mission to bring a lot of the principles that we find outside of dentistry, world-class business best practice. We like to bring that into dentistry, bring it into our clients. We're really keen to help people become, market leaders in their local community and help them to make a more positive impact with their patients and ultimately, a bigger positive impact in the world. That's the kind of lofty mission. And we have these 5 values in our organization. And they spell out, you'll see they're a mnemonic, they spell out the word focus. So the first one is about trying to be a force for good in our communities. The second one is about taking ownership for things and really recognizing the importance of ownership and responsibility for the work we do and the results for our clients. The third is about being client-centered, because a bit like you find in your practices, the practice doesn't exist without patients. Our business doesn't exist without great clients, and we have some great people working with us. So we have to center around our clients. And then the fourth area we think about is the unlimited potential that exists, and how do we help our customers and clients to unlock that level of next kind of stage potential for them and their teams. And our final area is to succeed or learn. So we really think about any experience that we have. There's no such thing as failure. We're either succeeding or we're learning. And that can be really useful as kind of guiding principles for the way we do our business. And there are a couple of other elements that we find useful. I don't know if anybody's heard of the United Nations Global Goals, but these are really inspiring for us. So there are 17 goals that have been developed by leaders of economies and of business to help improve life on Earth. And the idea is that you find one of these goals that particularly resonates for you and you become a champion for it. And our goal is goal number 8, which is decent work and economic growth. We really think we can make an impact for our clients and for our business here. And we're also proud members of 1% Pledge, which is pledging 1% of time and resources to worthwhile causes. And I personally do this through a men's mental health group that I lead called Walk and Talk for Men in Cambridgeshire. We are a voluntary support group, and we run regular walks, 2 walks a month, for men in the local community in Cambridgeshire. We've started to run family walks as well. And these have really helped us to kind of galvanize local community support. It's been something that for me I'm quite proud of running this group. And it's really made an impact in our local community. And whilst my business is national, I tend to work with clients all over the country. It always occurs to me that people in practice-based roles where you have a local practice, where you're serving a local community, actually to get involved in the local community, to do some good and be a force for good in your local community can really start to get a new level of engagement and commitment from your patients and prospective patients in future. So I share this with you, 1, because it's a bit of a passion project of ours, but 2, because it might inspire you to think yourselves about your own practice and the work that you might be able to do in your own local communities as well. And final message tonight, how might you look at making a positive impact in your community, or indeed, if you want to think really lofty, in the world. Okay, so that brings us to a close for this evening. If you'd like to, I think many of you will already be engaged with us, but if you'd like to sign up for our dental newsletter, there'll be a link in this slide here when we send it through. If you'd like to contact me or Teresa, both of our details are here. So email for Teresa, email for me. That's my mobile number, but Teresa will also be in touch with you, so you'll get her contact details as well. But I'd like to say a huge thank you for giving up an hour of your evening this evening, everybody. And we are kind of going to close now, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to either pop them in the chat and I will do my very best to answer them. Or if anybody would like to come off mute and have a conversation, I'm very happy for you to ask any questions or have a chat if you'd like to do that now. But I also appreciate it's 8 o'clock in the middle of the week. And my wife likes to call Wednesdays Wine Wednesday, so some of you might even be thinking of a glass of wine right now. And if you are, I perfectly understand. Jay says thank you so much. Julia, thank you for the great lecture. Thank you both so much. Thank you everybody for joining us. I will let you, if you want to go now, feel free to go. If you'd like to hang on for 5 minutes, I'm happy to hang around and have a conversation if anybody would like to chat. So thanks everybody so much. Have a great rest of the week. Good luck in implementing these principles in practice tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Dr. Kay. Thank you for your wit and wisdom. Love it. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. Thank you.